Early Breakfast with Rosie Wright on Times Radio with Eborn, your world of payments. Find out more at eborn.co.uk.
It's 18 minutes past 5. Let's take a look at the papers this morning. And many of them have got a photograph of an extremely happy, smiling family beaming out at us. It's Angus and Grace Davidson with their newborn, Amy. She was born after a womb transplant. Grace had the womb from her sister transplanted. That operation took nearly 18 hours. And quite incredibly, I think the treatment costs about £30,000. You can't get it done on the NHS. It's done privately. They've had a baby called Amy. There's lots of detail. We'll look at it in a moment or two. They're on the front page of the Times, the Daily Mail, the Mirror, and many more. We'll look at exactly that sort of incredible step forward in a moment or two. But the Times has tariffs as the lead story. No pause in tariffs vows Donald Trump. The Telegraph has the line from Donald Trump urging Americans not to panic despite trillions of dollars being wiped from global markets in his tariff onslaught. Going through the papers with me today, the barrister, broadcaster, president of Octopus TV, Andrew Eborn. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, Rosie. Always a delight to join you.
Should we talk about this womb transplant?
Yes.
Amy has been born. I think it is a huge advancement in what we can do medically. They're going to speak to a medical ethicist on Times Radio Breakfast a little bit later because it does pose lots of questions, doesn't it?
Well, all sorts of questions, absolutely. But it is, and congratulations to them, the miracle birth of Amy Isabel Davidson. It is indeed a medical milestone. And one we've spoken about beforehand. I've said there's going to be lots of seismic changes and advances in medicine. This is indeed one of them. And it does raise all sorts of questions, not least, and I can guarantee that it's not yet part of the reports that I've seen, the trans community as well. They're going to say, well, how do you define a woman? If you can now do a transplant of a womb, it does raise all sorts of new issues.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, the question is, does this potentially provide a route for women who can't have children to be able to have one in the future? And if that is the case, should that be something that the NHS pays for?
Well, that's a very good question. The NHS has got so many strains on its resources at the moment. And again, they need to look at those sort of efficiencies. And the devastating effect on people who can't have children that needs to be understood. And I think anything that can advance that and get rid of that as an issue has got to be encouraged. But certainly the cost issue is always going to be central. And as I always say, there are ways that we can raise those costs. It's not through extra taxes, but actually looking about efficiencies and so on and so forth. And as you know, I always bang on about my pet subject about AI and how that can introduce deficiencies. But I have to say it's a great story. It's a great feel-good story to wake up to, that they have had this success, and I'm delighted for them.
The papers detail the process, which is well worth a read. Sort of painstaking work to connect blood vessels. This is once when the womb had been transplanted, using fine stitches. The surgeon used this sort of high magnification lens for absolute precision. And then the question happens next about what you do. You can't sort of live indefinitely with a womb that they say has been transplanted from someone else, or that has been transplanted from someone else, because you'd be on quite strong medication. So what they will do next as a family, we'll watch and follow closely. Obviously, tariffs, Andrew, are dominating the news and conversations actually everywhere around the world. The Sun posed a question, and there were sort of hints of this yesterday. One by one, says this article by Ross Clark, net zero targets are being ditched as they hit reality. So let's halt 2050 altogether. Do the tariffs, we saw what the Prime Minister decided to do yesterday in terms of changing the deadlines when we'd have to stop selling petrol cars. Is Donald Trump actually helping accelerate the move away from 2050 net zero?
Well, the reality is this. You've got to look at the renewable energy industry is still predominantly reliant on imports of hardware from such as solar panels, wind turbine components and EV batteries. And for the foreseeable future, obviously, these new tariffs hit China and Southeast Asian countries that are critical suppliers of those goods. And obviously, that's going to be an issue there. But a lot of, political parties, Reform very famously, are saying they're going to ditch it altogether and spend money elsewhere on things like defence and going to talk about the NHS and so on and so forth. Undoubtedly, people are going to say, well, how can we spend the money? These increased costs, is it worth it? So yes, the short answer is I think it's a narrative which is going to carry on for some time about the effect it's going to have on the net zero targets. But certainly the immediate impact is these costs are going to be much greater, and as a result, it will have an impact on targets.
Yeah, definitely. It's well worth a read. The Times leader is on this as well today. Now, I'm looking at a photograph in the Daily Telegraph of it's a road under a bridge, and there are, it's hard to estimate, maybe 300 bin bags of rubbish piled up sort of to the same height of cars on the street. And the headline is, the Birmingham bin strike could be spread across the UK. And that fairly dire warning is coming from the union. This is the National Officer for Local Government at Unite, said members were angry that Birmingham City Council had failed to surrender in the dispute, so other places may follow suit. I mean, Andrew, it's really embarrassing, isn't it, that we can't get over something as essential, like making sure we can collect our bins.
Oh, no, it is absolutely appalling, and anybody affected by it will know how awful it is, and the spread of vermin, and as they always say in London, you're never more than 10 feet away from a rat or indeed a lawyer, but you work on that sort of basis. This is getting it worse, and I think this is the threat, if you like. People are sort of turning around and saying, look, we need these services. If you don't have these services, this is what's going to happen, and that's how they're having this sort of dramatic input and impact, and the reality is it's overrun with rats. It's triggered comparisons to the winter of discontent in the 1970s. We all remember reports of at least some of those. And it is, and they talk about this massive potential that this will escalate. And they've warned that strikes could break out up and down the country. So it does need to be addressed.
Yeah, but how? I mean, a spokesman for the Ministry of Housing said we're making available £69 billion to council budgets across England, reforming the funding system, bringing forward the first multi-year funding settlement in a decade. I mean, who needs to move here in this dispute, Andrew?
Well, it's always George or not war, war. When trying to find this sort of, remember the famous, there is no magic money tree. We need to sit down, and people always underestimate the intelligence of the electorate. We know that it costs money to provide certain services. So where's money being spent at the moment? And one of the good things about Donald Trump was his comic timing when he listed all the waste of money that they had and the fantastic work that the Doge is doing. We need a Doge over here to work out where can money be saved in order that we can spend it on essential services.
I think the government are trying to do that, Andrew.
Well, exactly. That's what we need to sort of have a look at those sort of sides and say, OK, look, where are these wasted things? And I think having that list, and you remember it was just very recently that Donald Trump got up and did his speech highlighting some of the massive wastes and so on and so forth. But it also, the Tories called on Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, to hand back £10,000 she's been given by Unite, one of Labour Party's biggest overall donors. It does raise these sort of issues, but some sort of settlement needs to be made, because otherwise there is going to be a knock-on effect.
Yeah, we've come up with no potential solutions of what they're going to be. We just want the knock-on effect to be that people in Birmingham have their bins collected. In Times Radio Breakfast, they're going to be speaking to a car mechanic who is seeing an increase of damage to cars because of rats in Birmingham. Sounds utterly revolting. We'll get more detail a little bit later. Now, Andrew, this is so rude, but we do see it all the time. Let's say you and I were having a coffee, or actually, more importantly, a meeting,
yes,
and you got a text. Would you reply in the middle of our meeting?
I would never let anything divert my attention from you, Rosie, especially in our meetings. So we work on that sort of basis. And what it is, though, is the chief exec of J.P. Morgan, he's ordered staff to stop reading texts and emails in meetings. He's called it disrespectful. I know a number of people, actually, some very famous TV executives, who will throw people out of meetings if they're caught looking at their emails. What he says, and he's quite right, he wants 100% of the attention should be on the people in those meetings. When they're looking at their personal text or reading other emails, clearly they're not doing it. He calls it disrespectful and it wastes time.
But the culture's changed because all of us right now aren't thinking, oh, that's a surprise that someone did that. It's become the new norm.
Well, I think this is the problem, and this is FOMO, the fear of missing out. We want to make sure we're always instantly connected, and people are expecting instant responses or get very grumpy if we don't do that. But I think the reality is, if we have this as a general rule, is that you're in a meeting, give your undivided attention to that. You see it also in restaurants and things like that. People don't know how to communicate anymore. They're all on their phones working on that sort of basis. What I love about his other management tips, he talked about working smarter, not longer, and he says don't read the same email 2 or 3 times. Most can be addressed immediately. It's all sound advice. I mean, he's been dubbed the $25 billion man because that's how the stock would drop if he were to leave.
We all need that sort of dopamine hit, which is why most people's phones are not more than a metre away from them. And that is great if you're using it to listen to Times Radio on your digital app.
Absolutely.
But if you, I mean, it is so rude, isn't it, when you're talking to someone and they're texting, but we sort of don't care about being, people who are really polite won't mind texting in a conversation. You wonder how you actually change that, or if it's sort of too far gone. Final thing, front page of the Times here. Who needs a husband? Asked the paper. A pet will make you just as happy. I don't believe it, but tell me more.
Well, I think it's interesting. It doesn't have to just be a husband. It could be a wife or a significant other. And what they've done, they basically saying having someone to share your life is obviously, it boosts your, they put a value on things. They say improvement in mood, as much might be expected, as a £70,000 rise in annual income, which is quite significant, obviously. What they did, they drew on data from 2,500 British households, and the study, which was done by the journal Social Indicators, found that living with a pet was linked to an increase in satisfaction of 3 to 4 points on a scale of 1, where it means completely dissatisfied, to 7, meaning satisfied beyond measure. And that's how they came up with this £70,000 figure. Anybody who has a pet knows how valuable it is to their own sort of mental well-being and so on and so forth, and what a vital part of their lives those pets are. This is now the science which can prove all of that. What I loved as well, Rosie, is they said that dog lovers tended to be more agreeable and emotionally stable, but cat people scored higher on intellectual curiosity.
Are you a dog or a cat person then?
Well, I grew up with loads. My mother used to have lots of animals. So we had 18 horses and lots of cats, which she rescued, and dogs and so on and so forth. But we have cats at the moment, which are wonderful pets and an essential part of our family.
OK, Andrew, thank you very much. Andrew Eborn. Tom Noonan is here to read the news, who's nodding. Do you have pets?
A cat back with my parents.
OK, I see.
What that says about my emotional stability, I don't know.
It says actually you'll score high on an intellectual curiosity.
I'll take it.
Which is probably perfect for reading the news.
Across the UK, on DAB, online and on your smart speaker. This is Times Radio.